if I could ask everyone just to make sure your phones are on silent, so not to interrupt the meeting. And I just want to thank all the county staff and that set all this up. Been working since like lunchtime today to set it up, and all the technology they moved up here and set the chairs up. So appreciate that, staff. You're here. We'll go ahead and start with our first agenda item, which is approval of the minutes from our October 20th meeting. Everybody had a chance to review those?
Take your mask off and stand up.
Or stand up and talk.
Do I have a motion on the table to approve the minutes of our October 20th meeting? Second. We got a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carried. Next on the agenda, we have Mr. McLeod. If you can go up to the podium and
Is it working? Ready?
yeah, go ahead.
So John McLaughlin, the county administrator, asked me to come and give an update on, my name is Boyd McLeod. I'm with Calhoun Oil Company in St. Matthews, South Carolina, right below you. I'm a lifelong resident of Calhoun County. Grew up going to schools in Calhoun County and graduated from the University of South Carolina. Actually grew up going to school with Chip and Barry from up here and have known them a long time. John's asked me to come and give an update. Calhoun Oil Company is building a convenience store and truck stop out at exit 125. I've had a lot going on today. I had to run home, take a shower, and just got here real quickly. So I just thought I would kind of go over what we're doing. We're building a 7,000 square foot store with food, fried chicken. We hope to have a salad bar when we can get back to fully running as a country. Drive-through, we'll have a drive-through, outdoor seating and indoor seating. We'll have a beer cave. We've also got 2 family restrooms, which will be also secondly for showers for truckers that are coming through. 8 MPDs, which is 16 fueling spots for cars and diesel vehicles up front, and 5 trucking lanes in the back. It's a 7,000 square foot store, like I said. We hope to employ over 30. Not sure where we'll be at 30 to 50 people. And that's really what we kind of, right now, Calhoun Oil Company, I was going to say, has 2 contracts. We have BP and Shell, and we're just not quite ready to announce which one of those that we will be with, but we will be doing that shortly. It will be 24 hours a day, barring anything to do with the pandemic or other situations that may arise. We have 10 stores in the Orangeburg and Calhoun areas. For those of you that want to see something that's very similar but a little bit smaller, down at exit 145, which is the Orangeburg exit where the regional medical center is, the Chick-fil-A, those type things, we have the BP right there next to the Waffle House. So it's going to have a nice metal copper looking roof. You can see they're putting it on. I guess things are going up right now. I just drove by there. They're working till dark almost every night. Any other questions, Barry? You know, this was the one thing I did not really want to share. I would say we have a 10-week schedule left, which would put us into December. And the goal would be to open definitely before the end of the year. But weather has set us back already a week or 2. So, any other questions?
When do you anticipate starting hiring process?
We we've actually got, can everybody hear me? I can kind of, no? Okay. All right, we actually have signage up now with an email for hiring. We're taking applications, whether you're at Calhoun Oil Company or the BP right down on Highway 6, right out on the edge of St. Matthews near Calhoun County High School. We're hiring now. Like I said, we hope to have between 30 and 50 employees when we're all said and done. Any other employee questions?
Based on traffic patterns, are you going to change the interchange?
That's not a Calhoun Oil, that's a South Carolina Department of Transportation.
Realize that, but still, there'll be a lot of traffic there.
I think that's in the works, right? Yeah, but again, that doesn't fall in my wheelhouse.
I understand that.
Right. You know, South Carolina Department of Transportation has approved our entrance and egress plans on both Old Sandy Run Road. So I will say there will be a first entrance for cars only. It's a little closer to the exit ramp, and then the trucks will enter down another 100 yards where there'll be a turn lane in, if that's what you're asking. But I think reality says, I mean, and I don't want to say for sure, but I've heard, so this is only conjecture, that the DOT is going to change the other side that'll be more like this side up and then back down. So it'll make it easier for trucks and cars.
My comment is I sure hope EMS is geared up and ready to handle all of the accidents that are going to happen when Starbucks and the tunnel team moved in on Suntag. I can't tell you how many close calls the residents of Valley Ridge Road had because of 18-wheelers on that little piece of road. So I can only imagine.
And I think that's what they're talking about redoing is that side.
But it's not going to happen before you open. But you said 10 weeks. How long is it going to take for that part to happen?
I would have to refer that to the state, not.
I'm just saying EMS needs to be geared up and ready because it's going to happen.
Yes, ma'am.
Boy,
Yes, sir.
you got plans for, I know not right now, but if your store does well, have you left plans to add on or
To the store?
expand the parking and things of that nature?
We do own a little bit of extra parking that could be, extra property that could be used for parking. You know, we're not going to be everything to everybody. Truckers, you know, it's going to be limited parking. But we do have space for other businesses to come in if they would like to buy and lease property. We would be open to that.
Okay, how many, and I'm just asking, so how many trucks do you think could park there? Is there room for 15 or 30?
I'd say between 15 and 30. I'm just not sure the exact number of truck parking spots on the back. Yeah. Did you have a question? Any other questions?
I'm just curious. This main road out here is 45 miles an hour.
Yes, sir.
Why is Highway 31 55 when it's residential?
Again, I'm a private business owner. I'm not. And let me say, I'll look at the Planning Commission. I was chair of the Zoning Appeals Board in Calhoun County for 10 years. And so I do know a little bit about this, and I've spent a lot of time with this. What I would tell you is the store that we own on exit 145, which is Highway 601, which is a 4-lane interstate, I'd encourage the DOT right there at the interstate to bring that down to 35. That would be my intention. Slow traffic down just a little bit right there at that exit. I've got no problem with that. I don't want wrecks anymore, you know, because that costs Calhoun County when EMS goes out there, Sheriff's Department, South Carolina Highway Patrol.
Well, it's the people's lives that I'm more concerned with. All of my family lives on Valley Ridge Road or around that exit 125. People's lives are worth a whole heck of a lot more than the cost of whatever, you know, the accident cost for damage.
Yes, ma'am. Chip? There? I appreciate everyone, and thank you for everything that y'all do up here. And you know, I like I said, I'm a lifelong resident of Calhoun County, and I love Calhoun County, and we want to make this work. And we want the Planning Commission for y'all to have everything that you need and want up here in Sandy Run. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McLeod. All right, Mr. Yergin, next item is informational only, the Howard Boyd High Hill subdivision.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, this is information only. Mr. Hill came in with an 8-lot subdivision that was approved, and the commission had questions on what type of houses he was going to put there. Mr. Hill has come back, and he's going to build stick-built houses around 2,000 square feet, and he said he would have a very nice landscaping package. So we're going to hold him to that. And that was just for information only.
Hey, can you talk to us and not to them at the table?
Okay. I'm sorry. It's, I don't do this a lot. But basically, the High Hill subdivision came in. They were not sure where they were going to put manufactured homes or stick-built homes, and the commission had concerns about it, and they asked him to make a decision one way or the other, and he has come back and said he's going to put stick-built houses in there around 2,000 square feet, have a lot of trees on it and a lot of landscaping. Should be a nice subdivision, and we're going to hold him to that.
Where is it? Where are you talking about?
It's right at Twin Lakes, right at the end of Twin Lakes, in front of Jimmy Hill's, between him and Marion's place. Y'all know where that is. On
And I
31.
apologize, I live 2 counties away,
My neighbor.
so I'm still learning Calhoun County. Yes, sir.
My neighbor.
What does around 2,000 square feet mean?
Well, plus or minus 100 square feet or so.
100 square feet plus or minus?
Yeah, probably so. He doesn't have a requirement in the zoning classification for square footage, and this is just what he has told the commission he'd like to do.
Thank you. We have no new business, but I can get you to address the old business of Gail Wilson, the Anchor Shred and Recycle LLC.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, members of council, this was brought to you last meeting, and it was tabled because you wanted more information on Ms. Wilson's operation. And probably the best person to talk about that's Ms. Wilson, so please come up.
Thank you, Commission, for having me. Thank you all. I'm Gail Wilson. I'm the owner of Anchor Shred and Recycle Company. We collect paper, plastic, aluminum, and cardboard, and we haul it and take it to the recyclers. That's our business. We also perform secure document shredding services. I started in 2015, so we are a small business. Currently, we're in Richland County. However, I serve from as far up to Chapin. I have Lexington 1 school district, which also goes all the way down to Pillion-Gilbert. I serve Swansea, Lexington 4 as well. Recently, we picked up the Chick-fil-A and the McDonald's right off the highway. So in looking for a place also to build my home and to grow my business, this property was ideal. So what we want to do at the business, it's 15 acres that I purchased. There's an additional 43 acres behind me. I own the frontage of this particular strip of residential, but what we want to do is, currently I only have 2 trucks, a 27-foot box truck and a 15-foot box truck and a pickup truck. And what happens in our operation on the daily basis is all that we actually store on the properties are the 96-gallon roll carts, right? So the trucks come, they collect the roll carts, we go to our customer base, right? We either collect the recycling, right? We either sort it at our facility, and then we take it straight to Sunoco or Pratt. We don't do any manufacturing, right? We strictly haul, collect, and move on. So that's what we're looking to do. What I want to do is to put up a one of the metal warehouse, maybe like a 2-bay structure that is attractive, but where I can have my trucks parked and also have my inventory of recycle bins.
Where is this located?
Well, it's off of it's Myers Lane, but it's in the like Sweetwater, where the Sweetwater Campground is, right down the road from there.
Between Sweetwater, Lake Road, and Kennewick Road.
Question?
Which road is the access to your?
Oh, so it's there's only one access, and that is the Myers Lane. So I'm at the dead end.
Sweetwater Lake, you can't access it if you don't.
That's correct. So there's one way in and one way out. There is no foot traffic. There is no coming and going of customers. It's just where the trucks are parked and where they load up.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, so on the table, we have a request to change her tax map, her lot from RD to LD. Do I have a motion on the
I make
table?
a motion that we approve it from mixed-use residential to limited development.
Okay, I'll get to you.
I have a question.
I'll get to you. So we got a motion. Do we have a second? We got a motion and a second. All right. So is there, we got further discussion and questions? Ma'am? Yes.
Changing this to the RD, from RD to LD, what that represent? I'd like to know because I'm down in between all of this. And the top.
Come to the mic.
The RD district is one that's been in effect for a long time,
Right.
and basically it's rural development.
And with the LD act, could you do what now?
Well, there's limited things that you can do there. RUD is the most relaxed, the most lenient, and RD is just it's a little more restrictive on the things that you can do.
LD is a little bit more restricted.
Limited development. Yes, ma'am.
So what would that do to the community as a whole?
This lady's business? Well, you're going to get a business owner in there. You're also going to get a neighbor. She intends to build her residence there. And are you familiar with that property?
Yes, I'm right over there, right.
It's mostly all trees now.
I know.
And she's going to build back there and leave those trees at the road. So you really won't see her trucks going in and out. And her business is not going to generate noise or dirt or dust or anything like that.
Okay, I just wanted to know how it affects the community because we don't want something to come in there that will ruin the environment for the community.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. I understand what you're saying. You know, I know on that strip there's some folks that are commercial truck drivers, right? And they have their rigs parked there.
Right.
Okay, it's very similar, except I don't have big rigs.
Right. When do you plan to build for your house?
So, I plan to start the business there, right? And then over the next 2 to 3 years, I'll start building a residence there for myself.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Any other discussion? one in the back.
Yes, sir. So when she goes, we change this from RD to LD, what does that do to the tax base on that property? Still just rural, or does it become something more to the business owner?
That's probably a question for the tax assessor, since, you know, we don't do that. But generally, business property is taxed more than residential property.
But you don't know that.
No, sir, I do not. I'll be glad to get that answer for you.
Can I
That
ask you one question?
sure.
I'll pay more.
Because
I
you're
know, I have
gonna build
to pay
a
more.
residence on there,
Yes, sir.
okay? I mean, is that why you're gonna build your residence there, so you can get a lower tax base, or
No, I want,
why do you know that and you don't?
Well, I don't assess the taxes.
But you approve property changes.
so, but there's a separate address, I had to get a separate address for the business, and my residence will have its own address, so it's not one address for the whole property. It's currently 7
You're
lots.
gonna have 2 levels of taxes, one for your
Yeah.
residential,
Yes, sir.
one for your business.
And let me clear something up for you. We don't approve zoning changes. That is what the planning commission does. We simply bring the citizens' request to the planning commission. We get all the facts together, and then the planning commission decides to approve or disapprove. If they approve, it moves on to council for council's approval before it actually changes. And that's kind of how that works.
I have a question. What about livestock, which a lot of property owners have? Will that affect, if it's changed to limited, will that affect the ability to have and what you can and cannot have and how many you can and cannot have?
Let's say that to the public comments.
Yeah, let's hang on to that,
Yeah, hang on.
because we need to move forward.
Okay, we've got to vote on this piece.
Can I just ask a point of clarification? The zoning is just for my property, not for the entire area, is that correct?
That's correct.
Right, so it's not gonna affect anybody but that limited liability, that limited development is just for the property that I own.
All right, so we got a motion and a second. And, no, we're done. We just need a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. All right, next item on the agenda is Mr. Jurgen for, the real reason we're here is for the Sandy Run rezoning discussion. So, turn it over to you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, as you are aware, we had a planning commission meeting last month. The citizens brought forth some concerns. We went back and did some adjusting to the ordinance, and we'll kind of want to cover the comments that we had. Someone said we needed to have the meeting in Sandy Run. Here we are,
And thank you.
and I appreciate that. I appreciate this good turnout. I don't think we'd have had this if we'd had it in St. Matthews. So thank you for coming, and thank you for being a part of this. Folks were concerned that they would not be able to give their child an acre or 2 of land. We've actually gone in and changed that. Any lot that exists right now can be split into 6 parcels without that being classified as a subdivision. We felt 6 was the right number. Most folks are not gonna have 6 kids to give land to, and it just seemed to work better. There were some areas around that had pretty much the same thing. You can make that subdivision to give your kids as long as the lot is 1 acre. 1 acre, that's what everybody asked for, was that ability, 1 acre minimum. If you own 500 acres and you want to give your child 250, you can do that. but it just has to be a 1 acre minimum. That'll kind of help preserve the nature of Sandy Run. This is a beautiful area, and I'm very interested with you in maintaining it like that. We had a lot of questions about that. Now, if someone wants to come in and buy more land and do a subdivision, they're going to have to meet some things in here. We're not interested in having a subdivision that's just a street with nothing there. If they're going to have a subdivision, we want them to provide open space and amenities for the folks that live there, trees, landscaping, and we want the roads to be wide enough to drive on. Yes, sir, absolutely, paved roads. Minimum 22 feet wide. We want to have a cul-de-sac at the end that's big enough to turn the fire truck around. One of the local subdivisions, I can't turn my pickup truck around. It's pretty small, and I'm not going to call any names, but everybody knows where it's at. So we don't want that.
How about perfect?
That can be written in there. Could be in the development agreement. Yes, sir. We want things, and I'll use this as an example. I was in this subdivision the other day, Creekside. As you drive up Old State Road, Creekside doesn't jump out at you because it has screening between the road and the houses. Nice looking houses, nice looking subdivision. And that's what we want to have. Something we can all be proud of, and something that, you know, we may want to move. I mean, I may want to move to Calhoun County. And I want to have an attractive subdivision to come to. We want something you folks will be proud to see and proud to have. There was a question about things that happen that are there that will not conform to the new zoning code. And I can't say this strong enough. Anything that is there now can continue just like it is. No change is made. We had a question, were we going to require a fence for a nursery? No. If it's there now, it stays like it is. If that's called a non-conforming use. If that building burns down, they can't rebuild it. They'd have to rezone the property or ask for a variance. And that's very much like what's being done tonight. They can do any maintenance on that property. They can paint it, put a roof on it, side it, anything in the world. Change the electrical, change the inside. Just can't make it bigger. So we're not trying to stop anybody from what they're doing now. We just want to keep things from coming in that are not consistent with the area. Ma'am, I'm old and gray haired and I don't hear well. Can somebody repeat her question?
Are you talking about one of us who live here in Sandy Run cannot change our home?
She said you can't change your home. She's asking about changing their home while she's already here.
Anything that is here can stay here. And if you would, hold your comments until the comment section. Everybody will have a chance. Going to give you 3 minutes to talk, and you can say anything you want. Basically, we've made some changes. It has been posted on the website. The T&D out of Orangeburg and Sandy Run News have listed the zoning ordinance, and we appreciate our partners in the press getting that information out. Any questions you have, you can call us. I'm in the office on Tuesdays and Thursdays only. I'm retired and work part-time. That's all you need is a part-time building official down here. But if you will email me, and you can get me by planning@calhouncounty.sc.gov. That goes to me, and I'll get back to you. I want to turn it over to Mr. Gardner. Mr. Gardner was the architect of our ordinance. He's gonna give you some good information.
Thank you, Mr. Jurgen. I'm John Gardner, and I'm actually a city planner, not an architect, but I appreciate the
Can you
promotion.
raise the mic something?
Okay. Okay, so, all right. Okay, so I'm John Gardner. I did lead a group of planners and an attorney in putting the ordinance together to try to give you something that reflected what we heard in earlier community meetings about what you wanted the community to remain like, what kind of development you wanted, and the kind of things you didn't want. So that's what we've tried to craft. We've actually only added 4 new zoning classifications to the existing zoning ordinance. Here in Sandy Run, basically everything, almost everything, is currently zoned RUD, which means rural, undeveloped, and it really doesn't restrict any uses. It doesn't establish a minimum lot size for houses. It doesn't require any kind of buffering for a subdivision or new development. So it really doesn't regulate development at all. And so one of the things we've talked about internally and with some other folks is that, sorry, get a little more forward here.
That's it. That's all.
Oh, you can't. Okay, that'll work better. I won't have to pull it so hard. One of the examples we've used just locally of how rural development typically happens when there's really no development controls in place, and I just drove it again today before the meeting, is if you go out Old Sandy Run Road, get to the end of it, take a right on Mack Street, and go into Gaston, you kind of gradually transition from something that feels really rural and very much like most of Sandy Run feels to something that just becomes a scattered mix of driveways real close together and a mix of all kinds of different development, houses that are 10 feet apart, houses that are on big lots, but there's no consistency, which is not necessarily what you're after. But there's also no buffering. Some of the houses are really close to the road, so if you go to widen that road at some point in the future, or it needs to be widened at some point in the future, the houses are going to lose their front yard. So you get a lot of negative impacts when you, over time, if you don't have some controls in place. One of the things we did hear a lot was folks didn't think you wanted anything smaller than a 1 acre lot. And that is a pretty typical rural lot, but what it will also do is make it almost impossible to build typical subdivisions. We've had a lot of conversations with Thomas Kahn here, who's here on, near the front. So one of the reasons that you got tall pines looking the way it is that's the most affordable way to build a subdivision right now. And that's what they'll do if you don't have any other control. They'll put in the smallest lot that you can do and still get a DHEC permit for the septic tank. And of course there, as many of you know, or maybe all of you know now, a lot of the lots wouldn't percolate, so they couldn't put a typical on-site septic system in, and they've got this community septic system. One of the things we heard a lot from the community on that was water quality, that you're concerned that might start to affect groundwater quality and might start to affect some of your drinking water wells or the community drinking water wells. And one of the things I've been told over and over is we've got great water here in Sandy Run, and we want to continue to have good water. We don't want things to be done that compromise our drinking water. So that was another point that we took into consideration. So we did do a plan. We didn't have this kind of turnout, I don't think, at any of the planning meetings we had, and we developed a plan to identify, mostly based on where you currently have water lines that are big enough to support more development, and where you have land characteristics that will support more development. In other words, not a lot of wetlands, not bottomland, but good, good soils. We came up with something that looks very much like the zoning map you've got over here, where the light green colors on the map are the lowest density development. And that's really based mostly on where the water line capacity in the existing water system is. because there's really no sewer for residential development, and there's not likely ever to be. And then the yellow areas, or the sort of light yellow areas, are a zoning class that we developed called rural neighborhood, where you would see more subdivisions, but you would want to see them with some open space preserved as part of the subdivision, with a tree buffer, as was mentioned, with creekside along the frontage, that would, you know, basically make it almost disappear. And we did some other things with those, you know, buffer requirements that would allow someone to preserve other things. As you drive around the community, you'll see a lot of homes that have a big pasture in front of it, with cows or horses grazing. And that's part of the experience you have in communities like this. And that's part of what I enjoy about a community like this, is seeing that active agriculture go on. So we've tried to craft this ordinance in a way that you can continue to farm land. You can subdivide part of it, but set aside part of it that would be open space, and it would be used as a working farm. That's allowed within the ordinance. So it would allow someone who wants to continue to farm but needs to recover some of the value of that land to develop a subdivision on part of it. The rest of it would have to be protected with a restrictive covenant, or in some cases maybe you could do a conservation easement depending on what you're doing with the property, but protected, and no further development of that piece that's preserved as open space as part of the subdivision. That was the concept that we developed here. So there have been a lot of questions about the size of the lots and things that result from that, and that's certainly something that we want to hear more input from you on. But again, 2 new residential districts are the bulk of what's on the map over there, the light yellow and the light green. The light yellow is rural neighborhood. It starts with a 3-acre lot size on average. So if you got 100 acres and you want to do 33 lots, that's all you can get. We do allow for the lots to be as small as 2.4 acres because you'll have situations where you need to cut lots a little smaller. If you preserve part of the property as open space, then you get a 50% bonus in the number of lots. So you can have 50 lots if you set aside 40% of the land as open space. If you do the math, you're quickly down to a much smaller lot size. What that starts to do is allow a developer who wants to do a quality subdivision with paved streets and all that to spend a little bit less on the streets and the water lines to serve it. And if you set aside 60% of the property, you get another 25% bonus. So you get 75% more lots, and that comes out to something like 58 lots on 100 acres. So bigger than the 1-acre lot net in terms of how many lots you can have, or how many residences you can put on 100 acres. And I'm just using the 100 acres because it's an easy example to use. But we're not forcing you to do that. If you don't want to set aside a preservation tract of your land, you don't have to. You can just carve it up into 33 lots and not have any open space, and you can do that. As most developers will tell you, that's going to be real hard to build a subdivision with 3-acre lots and have paved roads. But we heard that many times, is the problems that you get out of unpaved roads with more than just the handful of lots that you would have in the minor subdivision that Mr. Jurgen spoke of earlier, where you can do 6 lots, 1-acre, family subdivision, don't have to pave the road. You can maintain a good gravel road at that, but when you start trying to maintain a gravel road with a lot more traffic on it, you're going to have a lot of problems. And either at some point the new subdivision is going to come to the county, which is you, the taxpayers, and say, hey, we need your help maintaining this road that we built because we didn't want to pave it. So that's sort of the thing to think about with that.
Say on a 100-acre tract, you could have 33 homes, but if they set aside a portion of that land, they could have more lots?
Correct.
So what's to keep a builder from setting aside 40 acres, so 40% of 100 acres, building the homes that meet the lot restrictions, and then selling them 40 acres?
Can't. You put well, you could technically, but you're going to have a deed restriction on it that will prevent further development. Ideally, you would have a homeowners association, and that would be typically what you would do, and the homeowners association would then own that. So then the 50 houses, let's say, those 50 homeowners own jointly that 40 acres. And they can use it for grazing horses. They could use it for a community garden. They could lease it to a farmer under this ordinance to allow a farmer to continue to farm it, and then they would draw some income off that. So we tried to make it something that would enable you to still have some of the active agriculture that's out there now and have development occur too, but preserve some of the character of the community as the development occurs, and not just go put 100 houses on the 100 acres, which is where you'd wind up if you just said, okay, we think 1 acre lots is what we want, so 1 acre lots. So what you get out of that at some point is a tall pines with acre lots instead of half acre lots. Didn't hear. You could put up to 58 houses on 40 acres under that zoning. So you can get down to pretty close, but you're going to have a bunch of open space preserved as part of it, and you're going to have a 30-acre buffer around the whole side. I think Creekside is probably about, what, 3/4 acre lots? Does somebody know? Acre to acre and a quarter, so they're pretty big lots. So, you know, those, but we went through a process with those numbers. You can adjust up or down based on what you think the right spot is. We started really on the high side with the lot size for just a pure, I'm going to carve it all up into 3-acre lots type development. And we provided some incentive to set aside some open space.
If we want incentive for open space, then just heck the developments and leave it like it is.
Well, that's not, there is a way to do that. You go buy the land yourself and don't develop it. But otherwise, at some point, you're going to see development.
That just sounds like a loophole to me.
Well, I don't believe it is. I think you'll find a lot of other ordinances that do the very same thing with cluster subdivisions. I mean, if that proves to be a great concern, then maybe what you do is not provide the flexibility that we were trying to do. And this really been this conversations. Here's how we arrived at that: is that if a family wants to continue farming a piece of property but has to recover some income from the property for whatever reasons, hospital bills, college, whatever, you could still do that. So you could basically give up the development rights on that piece of property. And there are ways to do that with the deed. It's a deed restriction that says you cannot put any use other than agricultural uses on this property. So you can't build a new home on this tract that you've subdivided off. You can buy it, but you can't do much with it. You could use it as a active tree farm, even the way we've written it. And at some point, harvest trees off of it and replant them and continue to grow. That's agriculture, tree farming. So we were trying to provide those kind of options while preserve the character of the community and still allow a quality subdivision to get built in a way that economically can occur. Probably nobody's going to come down here and build roads and water lines. Of course, at 3 acres, you wouldn't have to have water lines. You could probably drill wells. But at ½ acre, you're going to have water lines. So we were trying to find that spot where you have a feasible way to do quality subdivision development, but also at the same time, the development itself typically will preserve significant tracts of land in their current state. And again, we've left that fairly open, trying to preserve agricultural uses. Maybe we need to exclude things like silviculture, which is tree farming, which we specifically allow. Or maybe we should require that the open space has to be owned by a homeowners association. Those are the details that don't really affect the intent. But if that's something that needs to be done to make people feel more comfortable that works, that's certainly something you do. And that's why we have meetings like this, is to understand what you want. Yes?
Does the open space have to be contiguous with the subdivision, or can they buy credit somewhere else for that open space, or?
It has to be part of the lot that's being subdivided, yeah. Oh, yeah, okay. Steve, Mr. Juergens reminded me that we need to hold the comments for the end. So let me just quickly go through the other two districts. I tried to explain the big changes and the things that are most likely directly affecting most of you there. So the other two districts that we've shown are a community commercial district, which is specifically designed to limit to, and I'll just read off the typical uses, things like banks, service station, medical offices, churches, funeral homes, schools, real estate offices, insurance offices, other professional offices, child care, adult care, nursing homes, with a limit of 40,000 square feet in any individual retail store. That's basically the size of a typical grocery store, so nothing bigger than a grocery store. Not like Walmart's going to come in here tomorrow and build a super center, but the intent of that district is it would not allow any big box retail. It would only allow something up to the size of a grocery store. The other non-residential district that we've added here is a services district, and we really added it to accommodate a couple of uses on Old Sandy Run Road. There's a new operations yard for a concrete pumping, not a concrete plant, but an operation yard for the trucks that they use going in there. And also the Country Clear water operation. So we've got a district, a services district that does not allow manufacturing, but does allow light industrial uses that have minimal impact on adjacent properties. So they don't generate noise, smoke, dust, all that kind of stuff. That district also allows outdoor displays and sales. It would allow, for example, a commercial nursery. It would allow building products, sales, yard, those type of things. And it would also allow warehousing, wholesale operations. It would allow, for example, something like a Thermo King that's over here on I-26 frontage going into the county industrial park. So that's the services district. So those are the two non-residential districts that we've proposed to add to the ordinance. A community commercial and a services district, in addition to the other two, which are the rural preservation, which would be a 6-acre lot minimum size if you just did a standard no open space subdivision, and then a rural neighborhood that would be a 3-acre lot size if you just did a subdivision with no open space. That's a quick summary, and I guess, are we moving on now to the comments and questions? So I guess we'll take those.
What are the zoning changes meaning? So if it's the commercial development, somebody currently owns land there, does that mean they couldn't build a house for a loved one, or what does that mean? What do those changes mean for current landowners in that district?
Well, I don't think it would prevent any residential use on an existing lot. We've written in the ordinance that any lot of record can have a residence built on it.
What does it mean for the taxes for that current landowner?
Zoning doesn't change taxes. All zoning, taxes are based on the actual land use. And that is a real common misperception, is that if your property is zoned a certain way, your taxes go up. And that would be something to confirm with the tax assessor, but I feel 98% confident in saying that does not happen.
And I also had a question. The gentleman that spoke before you, he said that you could not replace an existing structure if the zoning has changed. So if a home burnt down, a homeowner's home burnt down, they could not rebuild if that zoning had changed?
No, that's specifically why we've put in the ordinance that any lot of record can have a residence built on it. If a residence burned, for example, and you don't have a 3-acre lot, you can still build a residence back on the lot. Or if it's, and both of these districts allow manufactured homes. So if it's a manufactured home that burns, even though the lot doesn't meet the minimum lot size in that zoning district, you could still replace it. And one of the things we did do is we looked pretty carefully at lots that were developed that would be non-conforming when we put that in place. And there were a fair number, but we made some adjustments that minimized it. There are still a few out there, I'm not going to deceive you. But we made every effort to the maximum extent possible to minimize how many of those might occur. Yes, ma'am.
Can you just clarify something? I think when Mr. Jurgen was talking, he said that if a business was destroyed, the business could not be replaced. There was a statement about something not being replaced. So is there a difference between resident?
If you want to come take the mic, you'd be glad to come take it. But let me clarify that a little bit. If the business is non-conforming, for example, let's say there's a tavern next to a subdivision, and you don't want to zone that allows that use in perpetuity, and that business burns down, then no, if it's not zoned to allow that use, then it could not be rebuilt. Unless the Planning Commission recommends rezoning it to allow the business to be rebuilt. But what it would do is it would give the Planning Commission and the county the ability to decide, okay, is that something that does fit with the community, and is that something that we want to come back? And the same thing with other non-conforming issues where maybe something doesn't meet a setback, that the setbacks in the zoning district for that business require it to be further from the road than it was, and the lot's not big enough to do it, then the Planning Commission can vary that requirement, can do a variance to allow them to have a smaller setback from the side or the rear, wherever they can't meet the new requirements. So yeah, there is an administrative process that you would go through to rebuild a non-conforming use and either make it conforming by rezoning it, or if it's just non-conforming based on setbacks or some other minor feature, then the Planning Commission has the ability to issue a variance and allow it to go back. Yes. Okay.
Can home occupation get?
Yes, home occupations are permitted in both the RP and RN districts. I couldn't hear the question clearly enough. I don't believe it affects that. And that was one of the concerns I think that came out of the previous meeting that I was not in attendance at, but that got relayed, you know, the concerns from Mr. Jurgen and the rest of the staff. So that was one of the reasons we've allowed that minor subdivision that you can carve off up to 6 1-acre lots in any of these districts to address that concern specifically. Okay. Okay. I think what we want to do is get to some formal questions here now, and turn it back over to the Planning Commission. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gardner, Mr. Jurgen, for your presentation. And now we're going to citizen comments, and we are allowing a 3-minute period for each person that is signed up. And I think I have 18 here, and we do have a stopping point of 7:30 because we got people that set up all these chairs. They need to do their work and get home tonight. So I appreciate everyone coming out. I mean, the office is open for anyone that ever needs to contact us. So first on the list is Ed Fuson.
I'm good.
All right. I think it's Ida Color.
Yeah, please come on.
And once you're up at the podium, if you remove your mask so people can hear.
My concern is people who have lived in this community their whole life. We have property that was given to us by our parents or grandparents. What I'm hearing here is that if something happens, I'm restricted by what I can do with my property. I do not think it is right that somebody can come in and tell me as long as that property stays under my ownership or in my family, be it my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, that they have to abide by some rule that sets the size of the house they can build, the size of the lot they can have, if they can plant trees, if they can have horses, cows, or whatever on that property. My property, as long as it stays in my family, be it children, grandchildren, whomever my descendants are, should be able to use that property in any way that they see fit with no restrictions on house size, lot size. For all I know, I could end up with 100 children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and if I only have 50 acres, that means all of my relatives, my descendants, cannot have access to property that I own. And I'm going to go back to what Libby was saying earlier about building onto your existing home. What I heard was you cannot add to your home. I'm hoping that is incorrect. If I want to build a garage or a sunroom onto my house, why can't I do that?
As Mr. Gardner said, a single-family house can go almost anywhere. Because it can go almost anywhere, you can add on to it. You can add a garage. You can make it bigger. So there's no restriction on that. As long as your land stays in your family, and if you've got a family farm, that family farm can go on from now on. So nobody's trying to tell your children or grandchildren what they can do. But what we're trying to do is keep a junkyard from coming in next to your farm, or a tattoo parlor, or something like that, so that the use is compatible with the rest of the neighborhood.
And I'm all in favor of bringing new businesses in with restrictions. Those restrictions should not apply to existing homeowners, landowners, families.
All right, thank you. Kenny Prince.
Thank you. Can y'all hear me? and I thank that lady that just spoke. And I share the same concern on what I can do with my land and my property. I don't know how many of you went through that 130-something pages that we're talking about tonight, zoning ordinance. But on page 1, it clearly says in here that this shall apply to all land and improvements within the unincorporated areas of Calhoun County, South Carolina. Sandy Run is unincorporated, so the decisions that these gentlemen and ladies make on our behalf can be done without all of us sitting here and knowing about it. Just not that they'll do anything that's, you know, not what we want, but again, I think it needs to be looked at. When I say that, and I want to make this comment, but I want to ask y'all a question: who is this zoning administrator? And then I understand there's going to be a 5-person group of people that are going to be working also on this zoning thing that can hire as they want to, administrators, secretaries, whatever you want to call it. Now, who's paying for this? And it's not, that doesn't exist. It says it in this document.
So as far as setting up a committee?
Well, there is a zoning administrator, and this is singular. All right. All right. The ordinance, this 130 some odd pages, all this stuff we're talking about, shall be administered and enforced by the designated zoning administrator, who shall have all powers and duties authorized by statute or ordinance. Who is this person that's qualified to do this?
We had not established that person.
Do you have somebody in mind? You?
That would generally be.
You are not qualified to do that. I am sorry. I don't mean to offend you, but you are not. Gail knows more about her property than you do, and you're over there approving it. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be offensive to you, but do you understand when I say what I'm saying?
What's the
The zoning administrator looks at the rules that are given and applies, just like the traffic.
Those rules are in this 130-something pages, plus South Carolina sectional law places that it'd take me forever and ever and ever to look them up and tell you what they are. South Carolina Code Section 6-29-710. Apparently that gives all this authority over us in Sandy Run as an unincorporated landmass to be governed and things decided for us by y'all. And I'm not here to argue about it. I want to make this statement so everybody out here hears it. This paper out here, my time's up, needs to be looked at very carefully by everyone.
Next on the list is Johnny Myers, Jr. Thank you, sir. And May Myers, is that? All right, thank you, ma'am. Taylor Oxidon.
Thank you to the county. I'm Taylor Oxon with the Central Carolina Realtors Association. I just have a few written remarks about the 1 acre change that was added to the ordinance. So the proposed language allowing the subdivision of existing lots of record in the rural neighborhood and rural preservation districts into lots with a minimum size of 1 acre is problematic and seems unlikely to benefit many property owners. This section will only apply to lots 7 acres or larger being subdivided into 7 or more lots. As currently written, proposed section 612.E2 may not provide relief for Sandy Run property owners looking to carve off a single lot for a family member. This is because the proposed one-time allowance for subdivisions with lots that have a minimum lot size of 1 acre is explicitly reserved for larger subdivisions that create 7 lots or more. Because section 612 would not apply to subdivisions that create 6 or fewer lots, a landowner who files a minor subdivision application in order to create lots for his son or daughter would not be able to take advantage of the one-time 1 acre lot size standard. Instead, a minor subdivision creating just one new lot would have to satisfy the applicable 2.4 acre or 4.8 acre minimum lot area requirement, depending on whether property is zoned RN or RP. Further, the proposed section may also be problematic because, as worded, an owner can apparently only use it one time. As a policy matter, why should a landowner not be able to divide 1 acre off of an existing 10 acre lot of record to create a house lot for his daughter in 2020, and in the future create a second 1 acre lot for his granddaughter from the 9 remaining acres, instead of being constrained to immediately create all the 1 acre lots the owner can envision ever wanting for existing and future family members. One final point, knowing that the lots of record can be subdivided into 1 acre lots just once, the owner of a large lot who wants to carve out just 2 lots now for his children might instead subdivide the land into many 1 acre lots as the parcel will yield, in order to maximize a lot yield of his property and to avoid having to satisfy the larger lot area requirement in any future subdivision of the property. By allowing existing lots of records to be subdivided into 1 acre lots just once, the revised draft ordinance could have an unintended consequence of increasing the number of 1 acre lots created in Sandy Run. Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate the gentleman's comments. I don't think that's the correct interpretation. It doesn't limit it to just one time. It says up to 6 lots, I believe, in the minor subdivision. So you could, it wouldn't be there's nothing that says you can only do it once. You can divide it in up to 6.
Yeah, I think that was the intention, but the way it's written says
We'll go back and look at that and make sure those were added pretty quickly at the end. I do appreciate the concern, but that's not the intent, is to limit that. But I also appreciate the other comment that, yeah, there's potential to use that to put more 1 acre lots than you really want to do. And we discussed what the right limit for how many you should be able to do is. 6 seems like a good one, but we're here to listen and see what that number is that fits best. We're not trying to give you something that doesn't do what you want it to do. I don't live here. I do this for a living, but the only way I continue to do it is make sure the people we do it for like what we produce. So that's what we're after.
Can I ask a question?
I don't want to take up all the time for everybody, but yeah, please, go ahead and we'll do it quickly.
Well, you said you don't live here, so, maybe if you did, time would be important to you as to us.
Oh no, I'm not saying it's not important. I'm just saying that I want it to be what you want.
The limited development, the rezoning, not saying anything about the new businesses coming, new business can be great, but there's a lot of things that comes with the new business. For example, as she was saying, I almost had an accident yesterday because somebody stopped at that stop sign right there in the sun tag. I have a mother-in-law who was in her 80s and she was in the vehicle with me, had that truck not stopped, and I mean, he was well past the stop sign, then we'd have had a catastrophe. But my real question is staying on point. This rezoning, we've got this new business coming in that's a truck stop. There's plenty of truck stops down this interstate that has the adult novelties and this, that, and the other. This rezoning, does any of that allow for that to come in? Because I have children and grandchildren and hopefully great-grandchildren that I'm not interested in seeing that in our community. So I just want to be in the know. Is this all of this rezoning in some way, will that allow for that to come in?
No. One of the reasons that zoning ordinance is so long, and the 130 pages is mostly the existing zoning ordinance that applies in the whole county. It's just that there's no restrictions on land use or lot size in most of the county right now. Just to clarify what this current situation is. There are about 40 pages of that zoning ordinance devoted to adult businesses and undesirable businesses that exclude prisons and landfills and adult bookstores and topless bars and a number of other things. That doesn't change, no, and those are explicitly not allowed in any of the zoning districts, but they're specifically prevented. you have to provide some limited ability for them to locate, and I think they can locate in maybe industrial areas, is that correct? Or, yeah, I think it's only in industrial if it's a certain distance from a church, because constitutionally, if it's a legal business, you can't tell them they can't do it anywhere. They just have to meet certain restrictions, and they have to stay far away from schools, churches, and residences and other things. And it basically forces them into industrial areas where they don't want to be.
So the area that she's talking about, though, there's parts of it that is zoned industrial, absolutely. I mean, is Sontag not considered, is that not labeled industrial?
All that is currently zoned industrial under your current zoning ordinance. We're not changing or expanding industrial zoning
Okay, but that
generally.
sounds like a play on words to me. If it's currently zoned industrial, what's to stop them from coming in there?
I think the point was you cannot. Legally, they have a constitutional right to exist, and you can't completely exclude those mainly the adult businesses. You can limit them to such limited places that they don't want to be. They want to be on a major road where people see them. So you craft an ordinance to prevent them from coming in. I'm not sure that the current ordinance allows them to locate anywhere in the county, but if that were challenged, it would be hard to make that stand. That's typically what happens is somebody sues you and says, you haven't allowed me to locate anywhere, you have to let me locate somewhere, and they wind up allowing them in some very limited situation. And that's just the nature of, we talk a lot about people's right to use their land the way they want to use it. Well, people that want to do a business, whether you and I don't like it and disagree with it, if it's not illegal, you generally have to provide them a way to do it. I don't like that either. I understand your concern, but we're not changing any of that. It's really not germane to the conversation. No, we're not rezoning anything that expands that. The industrial areas are currently zoned. They're zoned now. All we're doing is proposing that instead of having most of Sandy Run zoned as rural undeveloped, which sets no minimum lot size, requires no buffer around the development, and doesn't restrict uses other than the current ordinance has a bunch of restrictions on undesirable land uses, landfills, prisons, racetracks, and adult businesses.
Hey, I hate to cut this good conversation off, but we need to move to the next person, Thomas Kahn.
Okay, so hey, I'm Thomas Kahn.
Pull the microphone up.
Hello, I'm Thomas Kahn. I'm not going to talk, I can't talk when it's a 130-page document and plus, and I don't want the gravity of the document minimized because it's a big document. It goes into talking about signs and drainage and subdivisions, of course, and different things. And, I would encourage everyone to go to the county's website. If you haven't read through it, just take the time, set you aside 4 or 5 hours, get a cup of cocoa and read it. But anyway, I'm going to speak just a second on this non-conforming and communicated with the Colonel and John Gardner, and I appreciate the county officials the way you publicized this meeting, and we got it out. The first one, Dennis and I were there, and then the next one there were 20 or so, and now we got a big crowd of friends and neighbors. But anyway, going back to this, in item 465, it says a non-conforming structure or use shall not be extended, enlarged, or intensified, except as in conformity with this ordinance provided. All right. So enlarged, extended, if you got a business, and luckily I'm working with the officials, and my real estate office is not in a zoning that allows real estate offices, and our nursery's not in the area that allows nurseries. So we have to get these things changed because the idea here in America is to extend and enlarge and grow and promote. So, I feel like the officials have been kind and listened, and, I feel like we're going to be able to amend this. And another part of this non-conforming says a non-conforming use shall not be reestablished after a vacancy or abandonment for a period of 6 months. So if you got a medical emergency or you got an issue, you know, that shuts you down for 6 months, if you're a small business, you know, you might need some leverage there. But again, like I say, I appreciate everybody coming out and being here and caring. Thank you.
Thank you. Donald Knight. Dargan Etheridge.
Can you hear me?
Pull it off direct, Doc.
I'm gonna tell you the truth. I've always lived in Sandy Run, been here all my life. We take it every time something happens in this county. Why is the whole county not being rezoned? The whole county, not just Sandy Run. We take it every time. They pumped Caroline Eastman on us years ago. Polluted, polluted, polluted. What else do you want to say? T-PAC, whatever it's called now, it changes weekly. You know, Sandy Run is a wonderful place. I love it. Everybody here loves it, because you wouldn't be here if you weren't. And why do we continue to have this kind of going on? And all they're doing is taking our rights to our land. That's exactly what they're doing. So if anybody thinks differently, stand up and walk out.
Thank you, sir. Eddie Knight.
I'll pull this down because I'm short. Hey, and get closer, right? Yeah. Yes. Just do it this way. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I don't really have a lot to say. There's been a lot of sentiment passed in different ways, and you know what's going on. I do think that it's a great idea that we have some way to encourage the right kind of growth and the right kind of things in our area. I'm a lifetime resident. I grew up here, right down the road there, as a matter of fact. My brother, sitting over here, we own property in 3 different locations in Calhoun, 4 different, counting him, because he owns some land that I don't own, that we're not involved with. My question is that when we have a piece of property that is not necessarily going to be zoned immediately like we think it ought to be zoned, what can we do about that? How can we address that and get it addressed? That's really the question I would have. Specifically, we own some land that's directly behind the store over here that appears to be, by that map, that it's going to be listed as residential, and I kind of doubt anybody's going to be wanting to build a house right there. So what are our options for rezoning and getting some input into those things? If you own a piece of property, can you get input into how it's zoned right now, how it's going to be done? That's my question.
Mr. Knight, we went through this and we assigned the zoning that we thought was appropriate for there. This is a living document. We've changed some already, and we'll be glad to do that again. If you feel like your land is incorrectly zoned, let us know. Nobody knows your land better than you. And if the zoning goes through and later on you want to do something else with it, Ms. Wilson was the perfect example. She comes to the Planning Commission, she asks for it to be rezoned, Planning Commission approves it, moves to council for zoning. And that's kind of how you would change the zoning on these properties. But until this document is finalized, we can make adjustments to it. And we will do that. And that's kind of why we're here tonight, to get your input and your comments and your feelings on this document so that we can make these adjustments and move forward with it. The initial thing was to preserve Sandy Run as an agricultural area. We did that with larger lots. We had a lot of concern that folks didn't want the larger lots. So we changed that. And that is an example of this document growing and changing and maturing. We can still change these things, and we will. If you have something you'd like to see changed, send us an email. planning@calhouncounty.sc.gov. We'll look at it. Mr. Gardner writes this. We will get with Mr. Gardner and look at these changes, and the document can grow. This may not be the final thing tonight. It won't be.
What is the projected time of that getting that done?
It's got to be approved by the Planning Commission. We're going to try to take it in the next month or so, and then it has to go 3 readings to county council. So there's going to be at least 4 more meetings. Council meets once a month. Planning Commission meets once a month. So there's at least a 4-month period in there.
Can I say one thing and then I'm done?
Yes, sir.
Why would you look at a piece of property that already has a commercial enterprise operating on it and list it as a residential piece?
That one probably just slipped through the cracks, to be honest with you. I mean, I apologize for it, but we're like everybody else. We're human. And we make mistakes, and we're willing to say, hey, we made a mistake.
Fair enough. Okay.
Thank you. Gene Raymond. Is he here? Is Gene Raymond still here?
Yeah, I don't have anything.
Oh, he's okay. God. Tom Knight.
I fully understand the stuff that has to come in to make a document like this, but in my opinion, we probably throughout the entire process need a little bit more community input to make ones feel a bit better about the final document. I really like the idea of the rural preservation zoning and wish there was more of it. I feel that would kind of fit a lot of what people want this area to be. Have some questions about the RN, RU, RM, and I think UD zoning and how they really fit with kind of the purpose of this document. I also like some of the stuff in how you're going to regulate solar, but please consider asking them to have a disposal plan for the solar panels, since some of the stuff used to make them are hazardous and are very hard to dispose of in the United States. Also, please review the drainage portion. It only uses the rational method. Most organizations, SCDOT, the Federal Highway Administration, and others limit it to between 100 to 200 acres. The current research by the SCDOT now has a saccharine unit hydrograph method, which allows for looking at different rainfall durations that can give you a better design as far as dealing with the properties near you. And one interesting comment I think I heard here was that, well, if you're incorporated, it's a little different. Maybe, just maybe, this is time to consider incorporating Sandy Run. I do not know.
Thank you, sir. Lindsay Alexander. Lindsay Alexander still here? Eugene Mitchell?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I'll yield my 3 minutes to the gentleman back here in the orange if he needs more time. If not, I'll pass. Can I use my time?
No, unfortunately not. So. Elizabeth Weaver. Did she leave? I think she did. Oh no, there she is.
I'm Elizabeth Pravat Weaver. I've lived in Sandy Run since the day I was born, and I've fully realized that, or I think that I do, that because we're not incorporated, there are things going on that shouldn't be going on. If we were incorporated, we would have more of a say in what went on. If I have a piece of property and I have a life estate on it, can anything be taken away from me or anything be done about that? Also, another question I have is, if someone sells a piece of property next to your property line, is there anything that says they can't go but so close to your line? That would be important to me. Another thing is, I live on Pravat Road. I had absolutely no idea that they were going to buy that 55 acres of land and build a school. We live right there next to it. We have hunters who hunt on our land. We use that money to pay our taxes. We can't hunt if there are going to be children running all over the place. We don't want to shoot anybody. So you're taking part of our income away when you do that. Of course, if you build houses, we still don't want to shoot anybody. But it seems like if you're going to do something that's right upon someone's property, that you need to let them know somehow, hey, we're going to build a school right next to your property line. There's one more thing I wanted to say, and now it's slipped my mind. Oh, I know what it is. I recently talked to the SCDOT. The roads in Sandy Run are not well maintained, and Pravat Road, where I live, comes off of 21 and ends on Valley Ridge. We don't have any ditches on our road for drainage. They're all filled up with sand and trash and leaves and whatnot. I personally dug out one end of the ditch so that some of the water could drain. Of course, the other end is full, but I can't get down in there and dig that one out. So something needs to be done about these kind of things as well.
Thank you, ma'am. Dennis Spildy. Thanks for the larger sign, Dennis.
My name is Dennis Spildy. I've been here only 40 years, so I'm a newcomer to Sandy Run. Just one thing, I really appreciate everybody showing up. Believe you me, this never happens in St. Matthews. Thank you very much, and I hope council and the planning commission take note of this. I got a document from John over here, and I want to read you some of these things in here. He said by 2045, which is only 25 years away, we are going to have 4,000 people more in Sandy Run. Think about that for a second. And talked about I-26. They said the planning is supposed to be completed by 2024.
y'all know what happened when we expanded it by 3 lanes already to 125. It's gonna be interesting. Tell you what, obviously the school board believes there's gonna be a lot of people here that wouldn't have spent your money. My whole point, I guess, is this. I would hope 2 things. Number one, that when we get done, John and the administrator, wherever he is, has a few words to say to everybody here about what's going on in Sandy Run. The other thing is, whether we like it or not, change is going to come to Sandy Run. It's going to grow. It's just a question of how does it grow. We provide most of the tax base for Calhoun County. Most of the people live in Sandy Run, not in Cameron or St. Matthews or Lone Star or wherever it is. We are the engine. Stand up and help have yourself and your voice heard. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Larry Jordan, Jordan.
My concerns have already been addressed by Mr. Kenny Grant.
All right, thank you, sir. Amelia Davis.
Can you hear me okay? I have a farm here, and I love Sandy Run. I think that the kind of people that live here are not the kind of people that want to be in Columbia. What bothers me is I didn't find out about this meeting until 2 days ago. I live here all the time. I work from home. There has not been the communication of this. Now I'm reading this document. It's 131 pages. It feels to me that it was written by someone who actually doesn't truly understand the character of Sandy Run. I feel like we're looking at CC&Rs. I'm wondering how I can have a farm and a farm ID and find out that I'm in a multi-use residential area. I don't need to have my zoning changed. I'm worried about my neighbors. I know I'm not going to build. I'm not going to have an apartment. I'm not going to have a townhome. I'm not going to have a trailer park. But who's to say that my neighbor right next door to me wouldn't do that? This is my concern. I have had no one talk to me. No one came and looked at my property. No one knows the area. When I look at that map, it's all of the brown. And I have a feeling that probably 98% of the people in that brown multi-use area would be shocked to have an apartment building next to them. I know I would. I treasure this. I preserve this land. I fight to keep my family land from developers. I don't mean to offend the developers, but this is what I want. I do appreciate that they're trying to keep unsavory businesses around. I feel this is going beyond their scope of responsibility. There's got to be some kind of a compromise or a middle line of keeping us safe and having a good plan without getting into our face and telling us exactly what we can do with our land. Thank you very much, and I appreciate all of your efforts.
That was everyone that was signed up. We had a few that got their questions answered, which was good. So we'll open it back up for till a quarter after, so about 8 minutes. And then we'll wanted to ask Mr. Nelson if he wanted to address anything, but
Three questions. The first one, when and where is the planning committee meetings? When and where are the chamber meetings? And my last question has to do with the fact that I was told that if industry moves in next door to my
No, ma'am, that's not true.
So whatever happens next door, it does not affect me and my property,
Are you,
as far as zoning goes.
are you next to industrial now?
Not at this time, but who knows what's gonna happen tomorrow. I live on Valley Ridge, and of course, the industrial park is right there on Sunpad. As the crow flies, about half a mile away.
Let me kind of address that. Before any property can be rezoned, the request has to come to the planning commission. That's where good folks like yourself come and make their wishes known. If you're against a piece of property being rezoned, show up and do just like you have tonight and tell these folks. And they take public input to heart when they approve or disapprove these changes. As far as your land being rezoned something in the future, when your kids or grandkids own it, only the owner of the property can request a rezone. If your kids or grandkids own it and they want to rezone it, they can do that. But they have to come to the planning commission to start the process. And then it goes to county council. So did that kind of answer your question?
It does, but it generated another question. How would I know that there are plans or consideration being given to property being rezoned? Does the commission, the planning committee send out notices to the neighbors to
Not
say?
generally, but we post signs
Posted where?
on the property that's going to be rezoned.
Okay.
We also are required by law to advertise it in the local newspaper. We make sure the Sandy Run News gets it. It is on the county's website. Any meeting in the county, if you'll go to the website and look up on the top right, it'll tell you what that meeting is and when it is. The planning commission meets the same time every month. Council meets the same time every month unless something changes due to the pandemic. And you can certainly go on there, and not only can you find out when they're meeting, but you'll also be able to see the agenda, what they're meeting about.
So is the planning committee meeting normally held on the fourth Thursday of every month?
No, ma'am, I wanted to address that. We typically meet on the third Thursday of each month except July and December, which in the past, that's been a kind of a break for us, a Christmas and a summer break. But we meet at 5 p.m. on the third Thursday in the council chambers at the courthouse annex.
Could you move that to later, because it's really hard for Columbia
He said it like an understood.
to make it that 5 o'clock?
That could be something we could take under consideration. I mean, I can't commit to that, but we can take that under advisement and talk about that.
Y'all keep saying to call if you have a question. What number do you call?
Could y'all hear that? She was
Yeah.
asking about a phone number.
Our phone numbers are listed on the county website.
Listen, where?
Ma'am?
What,
On the county website.
and what is the planning committee or what, how's it listed?
The building and planning department. It's under the departments and building and planning, and has our email and the phone number.
Do you not know the phone number? You can share it just in case she doesn't, when we get on the internet.
Well, sir, not to give you a
Everybody
flip
can have
answer.
internet.
It's
Not-
874-4201.
Not to give you a short answer, I don't call.
Yeah, the main number for the county is 874-2435.
Hey, that's been 4201, Jerry.
I think the gentleman standing up with the green.
Yeah, I had three questions. One, what was the initial catalyst? The gentleman over here mentioned that if you want something rezoned, that your property
Are you talking about the general zoning update?
Everything that's under the umbrella we're talking about tonight,
I'll let Mr. Gardner. And we will address that in just a second.
You know,
More.
Several comments have addressed, the concern that folks didn't know what was going on, weren't aware of it. We started in, August 2018, it was 2 years ago, we started a plan, transportation and land use plan for Sandy Run. It was funded by some federal funds that came through the Council of Governments for the Midlands. And we did everything we could to reach out to as many community groups as we possibly could. We put out notices at the schools. We presented the draft plan at the chili cook-off, which brings a lot of people in from the community. Some of you may have been there, some of you may remember it. We reached out to one of the churches in the community and make sure that we were hearing from the African American community here. Several folks at this church we talked to and engaged realtors like Mr. Khan here in the process. So we worked pretty hard. Right now you are zoned. Everything here is zoned RUD, or it was zoned in the Browns that were mentioned that are multi-use residential. That's the existing zoning there. It's been there for a long time. We didn't change any of that. And most of that is developed right now in, 1 half-acre lot, 1 acre lot, various size lot homes. We really just propose to change the stuff that is currently rural undeveloped that provides no restrictions on use. And the reason that we're only proposing this in Sandy Run right now is we've only gone through a planning process where we tried to reach out to the community, engage the community. We had 5 different focus groups of folks we went out and tried to bring in to try to get comment. One of the frustrations planners have is getting people to pay attention when it's just a plan. Oh, that's just a plan. They'll never do anything about that. And then when you start to try to implement it, everybody says, well, wait a minute. We thought that was just a plan. Do you mean you really want to implement that? So that's where we are in this. And it's good to hear the concerns and comments because we've struggled to get that input as we've gone along. But this is proposed to implement the plan. So the impetus for this was we did a plan with the community. It was well received when we presented it. And so we've translated that into, here's what we think is the way to implement that plan. That we tried to listen to hear what you said you wanted, and we heard a lot of people want to preserve farms and agriculture, and that's what they loved about the community, that it's not Columbia, and they didn't want it to look like Columbia Avenue in Lexington, that you wanted to preserve the character you've got. But you also wanted to accommodate some development because, as I think Dennis mentioned a little earlier, it's coming. You are going to have growth. And if you do nothing, you'll have growth. And it'll look about like what lies between here and Gaston. If you adopt this, we think that's better, but we think we can adapt it to better fit the community if we listen and if you'll work with us to find out those answers. So there's other comments, but I don't know that we can keep
One other
going.
question, I appreciate your answer. Who makes a planning map with no road names on it? Why would
Road
you
names not get turned on?
What?
That can get corrected. I'm sorry.
I'd like to see that in short order.
Go ahead. Do you want me to take other questions or do we need to?
No, I wanted to give Mr. Nelson a chance to speak, and
Okay.
I committed to giving you to a quarter after, so
Okay.
go ahead.
Hello, everybody. For those that don't know me, I'm John Nelson. I'm your Calhoun County Councilman. So obviously I've been very much involved in this whole operation going back to Mr. Gardner's time frame when we actually started and conducted the Sandy Run area plan. Was it spring, I guess, mostly spring last year, and finished in the summer. And it is published, incidentally. I would ask you to go to the Calhoun County website. You can look at it. I think it's about a 70-some odd page document, and it talks about a plan for some of this stuff that obviously we're trying to see how you want to implement it now. But it also talks a lot about transportation and growth. And before getting that, let me just mention a couple things. First, we almost forgot. I want to thank Beulah Church for hosting this. This is a big deal, and you didn't have to do that. But partnering and course, it shows that Bill cares for the community of Sandy Run, and we appreciate y'all doing this. Really do. It means a lot. For tonight, before I can get anything else, one of the things I just want to point out to you is I realize, and I think we all realize, that we're going to have to pay very close attention to what I call grandfathering in this thing we're going to do. Now, they call it non-conforming. Non-conforming and grandfathering is the same thing. And what that essentially means is, first let me take this off. What that essentially means is we're going to be very careful to protect current landowners and business owners' rights to do what you've been doing already. That's one of the bedrocks that we've been trying to do. Obviously, we haven't done a good job in conveying that to people yet, and that's something that's very important. Some of the businesses, I'm not going to point them out around here. I've had input from folks. There's a lot of concern about it, a lot of consternation, and we're just not going to change how you're currently doing business and how you're using your land. That's not the intent, and we're not going to do that. And if we haven't done a good job explaining that in here, we need to change that, and we're listening. And we're going to continue to listen, because that's not the purpose. I'm just going to review real quickly. Some of you got the memo I sent out. I got an email list with Facebook, but I probably didn't catch everybody. I apologize to those that didn't. But Dennis made a real good summary of some of the stuff that I put in there as to why we're doing this. A gentleman back to back a minute ago said, why are we doing this? And I apologize. I probably should have said this right up front. In other words, we just didn't wake up one day and said, you know, it's just time to rezone Sandy Run because it's a nice thing to do. We really had a reason for it, and we used, I think, some pretty good data and statistics to do that, and it has to do with development. And I'll just hit some of the highlights that I used from our Sandy Run area plan, which Mr. Gardner and many others developed. But best estimates we got by multiple sources is by 2025, as was stated a while ago, we're going to grow roughly to about 6,000 people. And right now we're right at about 2,500 people. In total, if you look at all the best estimates we have. And that was done by scientific research, and so it wasn't just pulled off the shelf somewhere. We paid these experts to pull this thing out. And so that was the start of this thing. Okay, we know we've got really good data that in a relatively short period of time, we're going to get significant growth in Sandy Run. Whether we like it or whether we don't like it, it's not because I'm pushing it, I'm not. I'm just here, not because anybody here is doing it. It's just a number of reasons our time is up, our time is here to get more growth. So the question is, what do we do to deal with that? Now, part of the thing that's going to add to that is something we are involved in county council and of course with some of the local developers. It's something called, it's being developed right up here at the top of the county. It's called the Sandy Run Industrial Park. Y'all have probably seen signs about it. In late 2018, a company called Red Rock out of Columbia, which is a commercial developer, bought that property. And that property for years had been owned by Carolina Eastman, and basically the county had worked with Carolina Eastman over a number of decades to actually look at a number of other industrial entities to come in and settle there. And going back to my time on council, which is almost 10 years now, we actually had two serious looks from companies that we almost got developed there that would have been in the class size of what we got, what is now DAC, what used to be Carolina Eastman. Probably many of you worked there before. But those didn't work out. But just several years ago, you notice that there's a Zeus plant up there now. Mr. Tourville that owns Zeus, they came in and they decided they wanted to they have a good piece of property, and they negotiated with Carolina Eastman and they bought that piece of property. I think they got about 100 acres up there. And they built that plant there, and maybe somebody worked there, I don't know. Wonderful state-of-the-art plant on the inside. Great high-paying jobs, got a great product. And so they built this intermediate-sized plant there that's about a $77 million plant. And so, whereas that particular site before had been zoned, would have been suitable for a very large plant, but we had Caterpillar about 8 years ago look at it. We almost got the cat plant, but basically they outbidded us and we didn't get cat plant there. And then another big, this is one you probably, I'm glad y'all didn't hear this one, but it fell through. There was even a copper recycling organization that was wanting to come in there. And y'all, some of y'all might remember a little plant over in Gaston called Nassau about 40, 50 years ago. And I told them, I said, that probably won't go over very well here, but thankfully the price of copper went to the floor, they pulled out. So we didn't even have to think about that. But what happened was, like I said, Zeus came in and basically took a site that would have been like for a mega large Michelin-sized industry and took that off the map, and now it's set up to where it's much more conducive to more what you call intermediate-sized industry. And so when that happened, that's when Red Rock came in and bought it, and it's about 761 acres remaining. And if you go to the website, I mean, it's out there now, it's released. they have a plan for any number of other intermediate-sized industry that will go in there probably over the next 10, 15 years. And since it's a part of the industry there, I mean, part of the development that is already owned by private investors, I mean, these people are in the business of making their money back. And they got private investors in there, their interest is to get it filled out quickly. Now you don't have Carolina Eastman there that could care less and waited 40 years and kind of hem-hawed around with the county and didn't do anything. That thing's probably going to happen pretty quick because these people want to get their money back. And once we get done with this COVID thing that we're all dealing with now, and if the economy turns like it looks like it will next year, that's probably going to be picking up a bit. And it's going to be more of those intermediate-sized industries going in there, $80, $100 million per industries. And it's probably going to be a lot of investment up there, which the good part of that is that investment, because Carolina Eastman, their capital is pretty much timed out and basically it's too old now. We're not getting really much tax base off of that anymore. All that new investment is going to seek to inject a lot of money in Calhoun County, and it's going to keep all of our taxes low because the industry pays for a lot of that. And it's going to provide a lot of good, high-paying jobs for our children and grandchildren over that period of time. So it's good in the sense they're coming in for that, but when you bring that side of investment in here, plus what we're doing out here at the 125, that's another smaller part, which is the Calhoun County exit, I-26 industrial park. That's the one with the Starbucks and Mr. Fitz and McQueenie and all those folks out there. That's going to grow some too, but somewhat of a lesser degree. But with those investments and those industrial build-outs of wood, of course, and we heard from the filling station or the truck stop going in, that's on the other side. That's happening already as we speak too. So you got that going on. And then we mentioned, Dennis alluded to the widening of I-26. That's going to happen here in the next probably 5 or 10 years on down toward the 136, I think it is. And then the other big thing that's going to really drive this, and this is going on my whole life. I mean, living in Calhoun County, I was raised here down off of Old Swamp Road, when it's a dirt road. There were 2 residents on it at that time. I learned to drive a pickup truck, 3 on the tree Chevrolet, from that old dirt road on the far side of Old Swamp Road all the way around to the Lutheran Church. That's how I learned to drive on dirt road. And it's totally different. That's all grown up. There's T-Pack, Devereaux back there. I worked in that plant as a kid. Been there, done that. But it's really grown up back there. And but the bottom line is, all during that period, we have been talking about a school up in Sandy Run through that whole period, from the time I was a kid till now. And there's probably a whole bunch of generations in here that raised children and want to have a high school in Sandy Run. It never happened. But what happened is Dr. Wilson, who was here earlier, I'm sorry he had to leave, but and his staff, but they decided to join us, and when we did the Sandy Run plan study last year, and they looked at these same numbers and they saw the same thing. And so really that was the thing that caused them to take a serious look at it and go from, hey, well, maybe one day there'll be a school in Sandy Run. And we had some comment about that tonight, but that's why they decided to come up here and take a serious look and to buy that property. And let me just say something to the school board benefit. I'm on the county council, I'm not on the school board, but I want to compliment them a little bit for that, because we talk about spending money and how much people pay for that stuff. If you guys have been following the paper, you see over there in Lexington County in District 1 now, they're having a little tussle about a bus shop. I don't know if they've been following that, but they just spent about $32,000 an acre to buy some land for a bus shop over near, I think it's over near Red Bank somewhere in that area. They spent a bunch of money. And it's kind of a scandalous thing because apparently there's some involvement with who's on school board or whatever. But your school board just bought this piece of property up here for basically market value. And so when they do decide to build that school, that land, that money that they could have spent $1.5 million up there buying that piece of land, they bought it preemptively, so that when it's time to build that school, they'll have a lot of money left to actually build a decent school. So they protected your tax dollars very well, and I compliment them for that. And so whether you like the fact that they built it or not, or bought it or not, they really, based on what we're seeing in projections, they made a very wise move. And so I compliment them for that. So this whole thing that we're doing, and let me mention elements here real quick. Just in my little letter here, I mentioned this we're the last place. If you look around Columbia, we're about the last community.
that hasn't been fully developed. I mean, it started when I was a kid back in Irmo years ago, and it moved all around the northern side up, you know, over to Elgin, just through that whole sector, and now it's over toward the Congress on this side, and we're kind of the last segment that really hasn't been fully developed. And once that school gets scheduled, or they break ground on that school, with all this other stuff, guys, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, we're going to grow, and it's going to happen before that. It's going to lead turn. And to answer your question as to why we're doing that, that is why we're doing this. Because if we don't do something to preemptively tell these developers when they come in here how they're going to do it, we're going to end up with about 15 or more tall pines up there or worse.
So it's going to look like red banks.
And it's going to look like places, yeah, I'm not going to call these other names so much.
I mean, they built a school and
Yeah.
it just exploded.
Yeah, and so I want to assure you folks as we do this, because this is important to me too. If y'all don't know this, I raise cattle right across the road over there. I got a farm right over there. And as long as I'm here doing everything I'm doing, I intend to keep a farm over there. Now I'll go and tell you another little thing too. When they came up with the plan to do this thing, and this is one thing where Mr. Gardner, as much as I appreciate what he's done a fantastic job, and I appreciate all his efforts. One of the things he and I disagreed on a bit was this vision for when we're going to be a town, or when we're going to go from being a community, a country community, to a town. Now, I think that probably in the next 75 or 100 years, when I'm dead, gone in the ground, there'll probably be some kind of incorporated area here. But generally speaking right now, I think that most people in this area like Sandy Run the way it is, and we're not after a town of Sandy Run right now. Now, when they do build one at some point, if you look at the roads and lines of communications, it will probably be somewhere close to right over here, across the road. That Mr. Eddie was here a minute ago, Bob, his property too. But just so you know, my wife and I, was my wife, not me, because I didn't inherit the property, but we own a big chunk of that property right across the road, right over here. We live there. And when they first did this plan, it was a big old blob of commercial property just stuck right there. And you know, I told John and the others, I said, guys, you know, I came to this like about 10 years ago, and I've seen a lot of politicians out there, and I wasn't about to do something that was going to change the character of my property to shoot the value through the roof so that I would benefit from that. So I told them, no, we're not going to change we're not going to make anything commercial around here. We're going to leave it like it is, and then this whole plan is set up so that individual landowners, when they decide you want to change the characterization of your property, if at all, or never, or whenever, that's more in your control. I don't want to be in the business of just, you know, making winners and losers here. And even though we got to have a starting point where some of these are limited, or you know, the development of the LP, the LN divisions, I want to make it so that if you want to make an appeal on that and change it, we can do that relatively easy. I know Eddie was mentioning some things a while ago. Well, I think we solved this problem because we just made a mistake. So we really want to be flexible and give everybody in here the chance to intervene and change this before we make it too big of a document that anybody thinks that we're trying to take rights away or anything like that. We truly aren't. I'm going to get your question in just a minute. Let me just finish here. Mentioned Sandy Run Air Plan, the future growth, but let me just reiterate one more time. We're not doing this simply because we want to do zoning or we want to create a 133-page document. I promise you. We want to do this because the population is coming, and I traveled around the world 25 years in the Air Force, and I made a conscious choice to come back to Sandy Run because I love this place too. I went around the world, I've seen a lot of different places. There's some wonderful places out there, and there's some really crappy places out there, I can tell you guys. I've been to a lot of them. And I chose to come back here because it's a great community. And I love it, and so I promise you guys, as long as I'm a voting member on Calhoun County Council, I will look out for your rights. We're not out to take your rights, your properties, or anything away from you. We need to change some of that stuff, we'll do it. But it's just vital that we come up with an effective tool that when these people start coming in here and building 15 or 20 more of these things up here like we got that have no buffer, no battering, should be called no pines, not tall pines, or whatever, or worse, just pick your spot, that we've got a way to tell them, hey, this is how you're going to build it in our community. That's the target of the group of people that we're trying to change, not you folks out there. And so please, it's a misconception that we're trying to take the power away from you. I'll keep listening to you. I'm always available. And whatever we do is going to be to protect your rights, but make sure our community, we give to our children and our grandchildren something we want to give to them. And that's what we're after. So I'm sorry there was a hand up there. Mike, what you got?
One, they stuck around, and I say this, they stuck around and bought that thing, the school board, didn't tell us. This kind of stuff, I mean, we're dealing with here too. That was sneaky, underhanded, and I don't like it. Two, you say you want to keep Sandy Run rural, but then you turn right around and say, we're trying to get industry in here so that our kids can have jobs, but really what's going to happen is everybody's going to move in here and take those jobs, and Sandy Run's going to grow faster. I know it's going to grow. But it's what you're multiplying that. You're multiplying that by bringing all these industries in here. So, I appreciate what you're doing, at least making it so, yeah, tall pines sticks in my craw. That's what I want to prevent that, and I want to do everything we can to prevent more of it. So that whatever you can do to make it harder to build and develop, we want to keep, and I'm speaking, I guess, for myself, I don't know about you all, but I want to keep it rural.
That's what we're trying. That's honestly what we're trying to do.
Not keeping it rural.
We will not do Sandy Run if we get a population of under 45,000 people because that's going to be Sandy Run. And don't you dare let anybody come along and change the name of this place.
And I know of no way that, yes ma'am, and we're running short on time. I need to wrap it up. But ladies and gentlemen, I know of no way to.
He said, then you take this before county council. Really, this part has no reflection on you. But it scares me because it was the same county council who bought the golf course.
Hey, I was on the losing side of that, brother. I tried hard, so fought it hard. So.
That's why I said, no reflection on you, but not necessarily have any reflection on you, but you scare me when you say you're going to bring it before county council, and that's a railroad organization. Ask me, that's my private opinion.
I'm one of 5 votes. I'm sorry.
Shared by a private number here.
I'm sorry, ma'am. You had something?
Some of us don't drive around as much, don't necessarily look at the website without having to pay a bill or something. Everyone knows who the taxpayers are. Why was there not a flyer sent out? I did not actually know about all of these previous meetings. I kind of stick to myself. I think if in the future, I know it would be an expenditure to have it in the mailing, but have there been a simple flyer going out, that would have been very nice instead of finding out on such short notice.
Yeah, we hate to stop.
That's one of those things that gets into expense, and we're trying to do the happy medium here. Because if you do these mailers, it runs up a lot of cost to just mail around every meeting we have. We realize that we're gonna fix it. Hey, tell you what, for the interest of the folks at the church, I'm gonna stay around here. I'll stay around here another hour or two if you want. I'll stay in here. I'll go outside. Anybody wants to ask me questions, I'll be available. But let's, for the courtesy of the church, let's let them go ahead while I give it back to the committee here, and then I'll dispense. I'll be available if anybody wants to talk to me. Okay? Is that fair? All right.
Thank you. I need a motion to adjourn. Got a motion? Do we have a second? Second. We got a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.